Hi, Tribe. I'm Evelyn, and this is Demon Dialogues, the place on Objectively Type where we talk about everybody's favorite subject, your demons. And today, a little different, I've got Virsaviya on the line. So, hi, Virsaviya.
Hi, guys.
So I brought Virsaviya in because I wanted to talk about Demon NI today, and I don't have Demon NI. I don't have an NI at all. And so, I've been meaning to, pick your brain about Demon NI. So I figure, hey, I started this series of Demon Dialogues. Might as well bring in somebody who actually has Demon NI. So do you mind? So we're going to play energy a little bit with this. I'm just going to grill you with all my questions.
Bring it. Yeah, let's do it.
It's focused on Demon NI, though. That's the only thing. So not every question under the sun. So I guess, to start, how would you describe your NI?
How would I describe my NI? So I think an important thing to understand is that a lot of people think that because you have Demon NI, that means that you can't make connections. I think especially the way that Dave and Shannon talk about it often is you can't see the patterns. And there can be truth in that, but if you do see the patterns, that doesn't mean you don't have Demon NI.
Right. Yeah.
I think there are plenty of people out there who are Savior SE and can see the patterns, but it's that feeling of feeling controlled by an abstract concept that oh no, I need to push against this. That's where I think Demon NI really comes through.
Yeah, so the NI, so that's the thing. I don't even have NI in my stack. So I'm really, especially lately, I've been really, really trying to understand NI versus SI because I have SI. And so, would you say that, and when you say a big concept, is your NI kind of, they say that it's limited and focused, if you will, it's the control.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the abstract, but it's the control of the abstract. So when you talk about Demon NI as a controlling thing, is it one concept that's controlling, one massive concept, or how does that work for you?
So I think NI on its own is I guess I think I'm regurgitating the same things that have already been said, but it's that through line. So that goes through all of the sensory that connects it all together.
Okay. Yeah.
Just a single concept that pulls in seemingly disparate things from all over the place. But actually, if you look at it, there's a pattern that pulls it all together, but a single unifying pattern.
It's a single unifying theory, if you will.
Yeah. Of life, the universe, and everything.
Yeah. Right.
Well, actually, that concept.
Yeah.
That I know, for example, in physics of trying to find a theory that brings everything together, that's a very NI way of approaching things.
That's true. Yeah. Because I feel like NE is much more sort of scattered, if you will, but this isn't about NE, so.
Yeah, well, I think it functions similarly, except that it's the SI that brings in all of that NE together, that single unifying sensory that brings in all of these concepts.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I feel like we take little snapshots and then we're able to see the picture as a whole, where it sounds like you're taking the pictures and drawing a narrative line through them, if you will.
Very much so.
Yeah. So when we talk about it as a demon, right? I mean, because there's Savior NI, which I guess is people just kind of doing that naturally, making that connection naturally and not really even thinking about it. So if you have Demon NI, the impression is that you have Savior SE. And so are you essentially naturally gathering the sensory and you're less willing to trust your end connections that come? Or how does that show up?
Well, it's interesting. Benjamin and I talked about this a little bit after my interview with him.
Mm-hmm.
And so yes and no. So when the SE and the NI triangulate on something, especially with masculine SE, it is this oh no, I know this is true. I will fight you on it. It almost feels like I get punchy with the NI, but it's actually because that NI has so much masculine SE behind it.
Right. Okay.
But I think it's that I can't draw a conclusion until I've gathered my sensory.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Right.
So if I'm not seeing the patterns, if I'm not seeing how things are connecting, then the way I go about solving that is let me go gather more sensory.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me go gather more and more and more. And eventually the NI will pop out.
Yeah. What I've kind of seen, or just, observing Savior SE folks, is that, to your point, they want to gather more and more and more of the sensory, and they're sort of, I'll say, hesitant, or it's almost afraid to jump to make that conclusion. You know what I mean? It's they need all of the sensory to come in. And so where sort of the demon part comes in, I think this is what Dave and Shannon talk about, is it's okay to guess, you know? Does that sound like the truth, that you guys are sort of less willing to guess or need more
yes
before
and
you
no.
go? Yeah.
I think I think that's getting at kind of like behaviors. And I think it's more of the, like, what makes something a savior or a demon is where you feel stuck,
Right.
and where you're not willing, or like where it's harder to deal with the negativity of it. So sure, I can guess. I think anybody can guess. I'm okay jumping to conclusions. It's when, for whatever reason, actually, I think you and I were talking about this earlier today, when my two observers can't triangulate.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And that's when I feel horribly insecure in what I think. So like my NI will be telling me something, but in some way it's not lining up with the SE, but the NI is right. Like, but I can't lean on it. I can't trust it because it is somehow incongruous with the SE, and I'm obligated to that SE.
Yeah. So
And
this, go on. Let me finish your thought.
I think that's where it as a demon comes through.
That's exactly where I was going to go, is so, okay, so if that's how it comes through as a demon, part of what I try to do with demon dialogues is also talk about, okay, we recognize that, you see that, what do you do about that? Like, how does that show up in your life? And then what do you do? Like, how do you handle that?
So one thing that, so Dave and Shannon, they mentioned this in their typing video of me back in the days when they did typing videos.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So when my dad passed away, there was a lot of stuff around that funeral. And I come from a very sexist culture, and there was a lot of things that happened then, like throughout that whole week, the men and women were segregated, like women weren't allowed in the cemetery, all this stuff, like things that are in the real world, like tough things to go through.
Right.
But what makes it a demon NI for me is that throughout everything that happened during that week, those first couple of weeks, that is the thing that I point to as a source of my pain.
Right.
I mean,
okay.
in addition to, of course, losing him.
Right.
And so that's what it's that idea that I'm feeling controlled by this abstract concept of like sexism, that I can't work through it, or that I'm somehow like being a woman in engineering is like, I have been talking about it nonstop. And ever since I got my type back, I'm like, okay, time to shut up about it.
Yeah. Okay. So that is fascinating, because I'm also a woman in engineering, a minority woman in engineering. And like, that's a big concept. That is a huge concept.
Yeah.
That I just don't even think about it a lot of times. Like, it's just not even something that weighs into me or my experience of being, and I have to sometimes, I actually was talking about this with some coworkers. My job had done this like women's conference and stuff. And part of like the struggle we have is kind of remembering that it's a big deal and then speaking from that, because there are like new engineers coming up that see us and they see, oh, wow, that's a woman in engineering. Like, it's a big concept, but I oftentimes don't even think about it. And I could be more of service to people if I did. Yeah.
And I think that's a great point. And I think, like, I have put in some like some guidelines in place into how much I'm allowed to talk about it or to think about it.
Yeah.
Because that is the first thing that my brain goes to, because it is this big abstract concept, and my instinct is like, oh no, I can't let it control me. That means I need to push away against it.
Yeah.
Or if I am going to be in it, I'm constantly aware of how it is impacting me.
Yeah.
Because God forbid it's controlling me in some way.
Well, and I think,
whereas,
go on. Sorry, finish.
Well, I was going to say, whereas like you without NI anywhere in your stack and with Savior Intuition, you're like, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's not your demon.
No. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think, again, part of demon dialogues is I also want to sort of highlight why it's important to be aware of these things is, I work in a mixed workforce. So there are going to be women who this is a big concept to them. And maybe there are some people in a skill code that are thinking, hey, I want to go more technical. Should I go ahead and get this engineering degree so that I can switch to a more engineering role? But they feel controlled by this concept. But if I'm conscious of this area that I personally don't have, I can kind of speak to that. I can speak to those people and say, I've lived it. This has been my experience and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah. You can understand that perspective and connect to that with those people from that side.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and you have play last. Okay. So your demon and I probably isn't like,
It's not.
horrible.
I'm a glass lizard, so I have the
Yeah.
double activated NI. So it's not as big of a uh, deal as it is, I think, for some other people.
Mm.
I use my NI more, but at the end of the day, our human needs trump everything, right? And my
Yeah.
biggest human need is EP variety, and so I'm going to be pushing against that control.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm really good at the positive sides that come with NI, but when it comes to the negative sides, I'm like, so like I told you, but I haven't told the world yet. I got fired from my job on Monday.
Yeah. That's awful.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry.
But I'm actually like surprisingly okay. And I think a part of that is because I have this like, without even realizing it, this like relief of like, oh my God, freedom.
Oh, the control aspects. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't even realize it. I was thinking about it today. I'm just like, yeah, oh my God, freedom. And oh my God, I don't have to deal with the tribe. Like like both of those demons in terms of that NI and TE, I'm just like, yay, I can do whatever I want. I'm not obligated to anybody but myself right
That's
now.
so funny because yeah, I think with my savior TE, I would feel different, but yeah, that's really interesting. I also wonder on this same sort of line of reasoning, do you think it's any different for you having feminine NI and masculine SE? Do you think that would show up a little differently than if you had a masculine, introverted,
NI.
intuitive demon? Yeah.
I would imagine so. I have never given it any thought. I don't know what that would look like.
Yeah.
But I would imagine so because my masculine TE is this like force to be reckoned with, even though it's a demon.
Yeah.
So I imagine having masculine demon NI, that plan like does become fairly immovable. So if you ever do, like whenever you do NI, it becomes this big immovable
This
thing that
locked
the
in thing.
sensory has to dance around. Whereas for me, my sensory is the locked in. So my NI, demon or not, like it can just dance around it.
Yeah, I'm reminded of Shannon because I think her NI is masculine, and she's
Yes.
kind of mentioned that like, yeah, when she locks onto a concept, she's got it. Where even Dave with his savior feminine NI will lose it or forget it or whatever, right? And
Yes.
because what made me think of it is, I have a masculine introverted fourth function demon, but it's sensory. So
Right.
I've got this like masculine SI that keeps me pretty grounded for an ENFP.
Yeah.
I think that's why a lot of ENFP stereotypes don't necessarily fit me, is because of that SI. It's just
Yeah. I
masculine.
also imagine having masculine TE is not very typical of the
Yeah.
ENFP stereotypes.
No, no, no. Yeah.
I think
So yeah, go on.
well, I'm glad you brought up that like when Dave says that NI, like because it's fluid, he needs to lock it down with some kind of sensory. I
Mm-hmm.
noticed that with myself as well. That like I will have an idea. I'll like a couple weeks ago, I was working with some coworkers trying to figure out an architecture diagram for our code base, and as I was talking with them, it was all clear in my head. I had all the NI there,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and then later on when I went to go write it down and put it into a diagram because I didn't have the sensory, I'm like, oh shit. That
I
NI
have
was,
the same problem. I have
yeah,
the same problem with my NE. This is, you and I have talked about GTD and how much we both like love it. And I think it's because
yes,
like,
so
the
good.
first step of GTD is like capture. And for me, it's those NE flashes will happen. And it's like, shit, I got to write that down. Like I've got like apps and things that I've developed to like get that down
Write it down.
sensorily. Even though
Yeah.
I'm savior intuition, because it's feminine, I'll lose it. So, I keep these pretty short, so I want to give you any opportunity right now to blast however you want to about Demon NI. Anything else you want to add and share?
So there's this thing that's been like in my head for quite a while, and I haven't made figured it out yet. I think, which is why I haven't like shared it on my Tidal Wave Tuesdays videos.
Mm-hmm.
But so I've been like overweight for most of my adult life, pretty much since puberty, and I've always really, really struggled to lose the weight. And I've always known that it wasn't a matter of like physical ability. It was a mental block of some kind.
Yeah.
And I recently realized that like, um, I think that is very closely tied to my demon NI, in the sense that like, so we all have these labels and identities and all these things, right? And there's a lot, for example, I'm Jewish, right? Or I'm an immigrant. And well, especially when I was younger, I made it a point of of pride, that I am not your stereotypical Jew, or I am not your stereotypical immigrant. And like to specifically break those stereotypes and to succeed despite whatever stereotypes people may have of me. And with all of those identities and all of those labels, which are very, NI concepts, I've succeeded. And so they don't like have control over me anymore. Like, let them go, right? Like, for example, like the penny pinching Jew or whatever, like, right. I'm not greedy. I give that, like that. So that just rolls off my shoulders. But when it comes to like that NI concept of a fat girl, and like that she is not dateable or anything like that, like, that is something that I haven't like broken through yet. And so I still very much feel controlled by this NI concept.
Yeah, that's so fascinating, because it's, a lot of women have body image issues. Like I do too, but for me, interestingly, like to contrast it, a lot of times I feel like I don't live up to sort of a lot of times I think of it as the ST part, because it's like the objective for me. It's like this very objective thing of like, well, the BMI says that I should be this, like that's where I get stuck, which is so bizarre.
Like in the SI specific like details. Oh, yes. That's fascinating.
Yeah, that's where I get stuck. So I mean, you brought this up, so again, this one will be a little bit longer because there's two of us obviously. But like 10 years ago, I was overweight, but I was doing martial arts and stuff, and I was at a conference for martial artists, and this woman was doing like body fat calculations with the calipers, and I was fine with my body until she told me my body fat percentage. Once I saw that like SI of like, your number is here and obese is right here, I was like, I need to lose weight. And I went on like a spiral, and I mean, I lost a ton of weight. I actually went too far. That's like a whole nother story. But like, it was seeing that my body fat did not meet like this objective, SI number is what got me. Yeah.
I think this is just a great example of how like anybody can do anything, right? But it's like, so why is that a thing that we struggle with, right? Like for me, it's coming from the NI, like the SI, like that rolls off my shoulders. It's this NI concept, whereas for you, it's the other way around. The NI just like, whatever, but it's this SI that you feel stuck and controlled by. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, let this be a lesson to everybody. Like when you're trying to type people, like you can't just be like, well, they have body image issues, therefore that must be demon NI. Like it could be, you have to think of the why behind it.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
I think you and I talked about that once at when we were talking about why meditation was so fruitful for us.
Right.
And for me, it was because it allowed me to make the NI connections, whereas for you, it was because it allowed you to SF sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right. So like the behavior is the same, but why it is powerful is different.
Yep. Well, okay. Any other thoughts or anything, or you want to just wrap it up?
No. Yeah. I think the main thing is that like that idea that just because you have Savior SE, Savior Lead SE means that you can't NI, or whatever your lead function, that you can't do the last one. That's not true. It's just that we feel stuck when it comes to the negativity of that last function.
Yeah. And I think just recognizing that can be hugely beneficial. Like you've seen, like, it's like, okay, I at least know where that is. So until you'll still have that stuck feeling, but now it's like, okay, I can start to work with it because I know, that I'm going to feel stuck with this every single time. Yeah.
You know what's interesting? I found a way to hack it, so to speak, but I haven't like fully done it yet. But like I can see my brain adjusting in the way that it's approaching things. Is that like, oh no, I'm not going to let this idea of demon NI control me.
Not going to let this control thing control me, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
Hashtag EP.
It's like, using your saviors to bring up your demons.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. So, yep. Well, cool. Well, thank you. Yeah. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yeah. All right, cool. Bye.
Bye.
And scene. I feel like we should.